Please consider supporting Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. You can learn more about them at bwunited.ca. They are always looking for donations and volunteers. So please, again, support Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. Again, that website is bwunited.ca.
My name is Frank Silvestri. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, not a Canadian. And Philly's really close to New Jersey, by the way. And I'm here to talk to you about why I am a Patreon supporter of Vish Khanna's Creative Control podcast, the unique long-form exploration of music, comedy, art, geography, and so much more. Vish is an incredible interviewer who has a charming, disarming, funny, reverently irreverent style, which feels a lot more like a conversation with friends than a podcast interview. These conversations have included talking to people like Jeff Tweedy, Nels Klein, Ira Kaplan, Dan Romano, Carson McHone, the White Hot Lung, Juliana Riolino, and one of my all-time favorites, the Sadies. So if you're like me and you find these kind of conversations vital, essential, and important, I hope you'll join me in supporting Creative Control on Patreon.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control today.
We're dead fucking last. I'm Crazy Tom, Crazy Marnie, Crazy Adam, and fucked up Tony! Fuck you.
Monty Messex is a talented musician and songwriter based in his hometown of Los Angeles, California. After being immersed in the first wave of LA punk and hardcore, attending early shows by the likes of The Germs, Black Flag, and Fear, among others, Messex formed the band Atoms, whose first drummer, Izzy Stradlin, would go on to play guitar in Guns N' Roses. Messex and his skater friend Crazy Tom Davis later joined forces to form a band called Dead Fucking Last, or DFL, whose original guitarist was their friend Adam Horovitz from Beastie Boys. DFL's debut album, My Crazy Life, was originally released in 1994 on the Beasties' own label, Grand Royal, and on August 11th, 2023, Trust Records released a deluxe reissue, which includes a 20-page oral history, a zine, and remastered audio by the album's original producer, Mario Caldato Jr. Monty and I connected recently for a wide-ranging talk about stuff like his life growing up in Los Angeles and earliest musical influences, how he first heard about punk and began attending shows with friends, his relationships with people like Izzy Stradlin and Axl Rose, and actually seeing an early show by Guns N' Roses, being a part of the Germs' social circle and descending into drug addiction himself, sobering up and collaborating with people like Carla Bozulich, entering the Beastie Boys friend network and starting a band with Ad Rock, DFL working with Epitaph Records just as punk was becoming a mainstream concern again, what makes My Crazy Life and Crazy Tom so crazy, what's next for DFL, and much more. A part of the Entertainment One Network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this donor-driven podcast and spread the word about it, and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/Creative Control. Thanks, as always, for supporting the show on Patreon. Plus, in-kind support from Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. This is episode 807 of Creative Control, featuring the lovely and talented Monty Messex from DFL, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hey, Monty, how's it going?
Hey, Vish. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's nice to have you there. Where in the world are you?
I am in Los Angeles. Live in Silver Lake in Los Angeles, California.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, I love LA. It's born and raised here, so this is home.
Oh, nice. I didn't realize you were actually born and raised there. So you've been there your whole life. Have you ever lived anywhere else?
Nope. No, I've been all over the world traveling, but I've never lived anywhere else but in the city of LA.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's good for you. That's you know yourself. You know what you like. Clearly, that's great. And sorry, of the places you visited, was there anywhere you were like, this is a close second? If I had to relocate, this would be the place. Anywhere in the world?
I don't know. I mean, I like to visit places, but this is home. It's like my family's here, and I know where everything is, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know people that like from LA, like they'll move up to San Francisco, and like San Francisco is a really amazing city to visit, but some friends will move there and they always come back to LA because living someplace and visiting someplace are two different things.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I haven't been to, oddly, in all my travels around the world and in America from Canada, I just have not made it to California, and it's weird. I mention this sometimes. I assume I'll be there at some point because I have friends there and lots of things I want to experience and visit. So hopefully I get to be there soon. By the same token, have you ever been to Canada?
I have. I've been to, we just played a festival in Montreal called Pouza Fest.
Oh, cool.
And with this guy, Hugo Moody, I think he was in the St. Catharines, and great guy. He invited us, and it's the second time we've been there. And I think in the 90s we toured. We played in Vancouver with Pennywise while we were on tour with them. Mm-hmm. And I've been to Vancouver too when I was a little kid. I think we went to Victoria Island, but it's beautiful up there. And speaking of places to move, I know a lot of people, at least from the U.S., were thinking about moving to Canada, with the results of the last election. If they would have gone the other way, I know a lot of people were thinking about getting out. Yeah. So I don't know if people did that or not. You
haven't thought of that, have you?
No. Well, I mean, you think about it, but no. Like I said, this is home.
All right. Well, no, it's good. Like I say, it's good that you know yourself, and this is where your band DFL formed in Los Angeles, and we want to get into that history. First of all, congratulations on the reissue of this record, My Crazy Life. I had this on compact disc in the 90s because I was a huge Beastie Boys fan. I have it somewhere still. I can't locate it. I meant to locate it before we got on this call, and it's somewhere I brought all my CDs. People make fun of me for keeping physical media of any kind. I have a record collection and compact disc. Are you a physical media person, or have you embraced the intangible digital media landscape?
I'm both person. I mean, I definitely have embraced the digital media and the ways that you can access songs, online through Spotify or whatever. Yeah. And recording too, in this day and age, you can record tracks at one place and bounce them over to somebody in some place completely different in the world, and they can work on them. And so it's cool. It has its upsides. Yeah. And you can get music out to a lot of people. But I also still have my record collection. I still believe in physical media, like records, and we tapes, and I think I might have some. I still have a couple CDs floating around. I have some cassettes, and I pretty much saved all my punk rock records from when I got into punk in the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah. So I still have tons of those records.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I mean, some of the CDs I've kept, there was a period in the mid 90s to at least maybe 2010 or something, where certain bands, they would only press their work on compact discs, certainly independent bands, because that's what was in vogue. So if I didn't keep those, they're not on any Bandcamp or any other digital platform. So that's kind of why I keep them. You know what I mean? Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. Totally. So you alluded to the fact that you have been collecting punk rock since the 70s. Monty, how did you sort of get into music as a young person? Do you remember what inspired you?
Yeah, I've always loved music my whole life. It's always one of those things, like I guess for a lot of people, it just it speaks to me. I can feel it. It touches me in a way. And from when I was a little kid in like the 70s, listening to like my mom's stuff with like Bob Dylan and stuff like that, and getting into, Zeppelin and Sabbath and stuff like that when I was a little kid, and Aerosmith, and then punk rock, and like my first punk show in '79, and just hearing that music and just being like, wow, I'm home. This is what I've been looking for my whole life, in terms of just the feel of it and the vibe of the scene and everything.
Yeah. What was that first punk rock show you saw in '79? I
went with some friends actually of Tom Davis. He wasn't there, but we were all friends. I went with my friend Taz, my friend Drew Bernstein, and we like basically Drew stole his mom's car. He had like this little yellow Honda Civic, and we drove down to downtown LA. There's like a place called Chinatown in downtown LA, and there's a club there called the Hong Kong Cafe, and I think it was Halloween '79, and we were just, I was probably about 15 maybe at the time, and just looking in the paper, there was a paper called I think it was the LA Weekly or the Recycler or one of those papers, and it listed off all the shows for that week, and so we were like, oh, here's this show. It had bands that sounded cool, and we knew a little bit about punk rock from listening to like Rodney on the Rock at like 12 midnight, and went there, and we saw the Germs headline.
Oh, wow.
Fear.
Wow.
This art band that was really pretty interesting called Chinas Comidas, which would be one of those bands that definitely you wouldn't find on probably on digital media. You'd have to have like, the records they put out. I don't even know if they did put out records. And then the opening band was Black Flag. Wow. With Keith Morris singing. And it was like Halloween, so Keith was like crammed into this little kid Spider-Man costume like you'd buy at like a pharmacy or something, like for us like CVS or something like that. And I just thought it was so funny because he was like rolling around on the floor on this in this Spider-Man costume. And the Hong Kong was really cool. It had this really low ceiling and this very, very low stage, like maybe 6 inches off the ground. And it smelled like Chinese food and sweat and cigarettes, and I just loved it.
Oh, that sounds incredible. A quick side note, I've seen Off many times, and Keith and I have spoken many times. He is very funny. So your description of him, it resonates with me. Had you heard any of that's an amazing lineup. Germs, Fear, and Black Flag. Had you heard them at 15 years old? Had you heard any of their music before you went to their show?
Like I said, we would listen to Rodney on the Rock. So that was, at that time, that was the only place you could really hear like punk rock or new wave.
Right.
And I don't know if I had, it's a long time ago. I don't know if I really had heard any of that music. I know that like shortly after, I did go out and buy Black Flag's first Nervous Breakdown 7-inch, which I still have. Mm-hmm. And I went out and bought the Germs record, which I still have. And I also had bought Forming, which was their first 7-inch, but I think I threw it at a friend of mine and it's broken in half.
You threw it at a friend of yours? Is that what you just said?
I think so. It's broken in half. But I still have it.
You were angry at the friend? You were trying to hurt the friend?
I don't know. I think we were just being idiots,
because
stuff at each other.
If someone throws a record at you and it's chucked the right way, it might leave a bit of a bruise.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, well, we're not going to get into the weird socio-politics of throwing records at people at your age. That's fine. Okay, so coming from your background of, by the way, you mentioned a few things there: Aerosmith, Zeppelin, Dylan. Do you maintain an interest in any of those things? Because sometimes when people discover punk rock, it obliterates all the stuff that they came up with, and they're almost angry at it. Oh, that was bullshit. This is the real stuff. As you're older now, do you appreciate some of the music your mother got you into and you first heard?
I never really was like, that's bullshit. Definitely in early punk rock days, it was kind of like, you only listen to punk rock and don't listen to anything else, because those were like the hippies or whatever. But, I've always loved Zeppelin, and Sabbath and Aerosmith, and I still do. I mean, those are great bands. I mean, I was listening to them yesterday. I had to drive, had like an hour and a half drive yesterday in traffic, and so I made like this classic rock mix on my phone and listened to it like all the way down there.
Oh,
so
well, you're
great songs. Man.
You wouldn't know this, of course, but you're speaking right now to a huge Bob Dylan fan. Have you maintained any interest in him?
Not as much, not as much. I mean, he definitely a great songwriter, and and has written some amazing, obviously amazing songs and albums, and just done groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah,
but not as much, not as much as like say for like Zeppelin or something like that, or Sabbath, or even Aerosmith at the time, like Toys in the Attic and Rocks and stuff like that.
I see. Okay, makes sense. So you went more in the harder rock, riff-oriented realm, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, like I love like Nashville Skyline and Girl from the Northwoods or something.
North Country.
That's a song
Girl
he did
from
with
yeah.
Yeah, North Country. They did it with Johnny Cash. Yeah. I mean, that's an amazing song. I mean, just thinking about that song gives me goosebumps.
It's a beautiful recording. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. I didn't mean to dwell too much. For those who listen to the show, they know any entry point into Dylan, I'm going to take it and see where we go. So sorry about that. Right, a bit of a side note there. So you're when you're 15 and you're seeing that punk rock show. Are you already at that point yourself playing any music, like playing guitar or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So around that time, around 79, when we first saw that punk show, and then subsequently started going to lots of punk shows. I mean, there were shows every night of the week that you could go to, and you could go to the Hong Kong, you could go in West Hollywood to the Starwood, you could go to the South Bay and to the Fleetwood, or you could go to East LA to the Becks. I mean, there was just tons of clubs, downtown Hope Street Hall. So there was just every night you could go out and see a band. It was just, amazing. And so myself and one of the guys that I went to that show with, this guy Taz Rudd, he and I started a punk rock band called the Atoms, ATOMS. Mm-hmm. And we never put anything out. We played a lot of shows, and we kind of were part of the scene. And actually, I was on a podcast with another Canadian, with Damien Abraham, mm-hmm. on his podcast. I think it was like last year or something. And he knew all about the Atoms, or at least he wanted to know all about the Atoms. He knew a little bit that was publicly available. So I was on his show to talk about the Atoms, which was cool. Yeah,
Damien's a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, and he's a walking encyclopedia of hardcore punk. So I'm sure he knew all about the Atoms, I'm guessing. And that's lovely that you got to talk about that. And this is a band, by the way, for those who don't know, if I understand things correctly, also in this band, Izzy Stradlin, before he was in Guns N' Roses. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Izzy showed up on the punk scene from Indiana, I think is where he was from.
Yeah.
And we knew him as Jeff. I never knew him as Izzy Stradlin, really. And he played drums in the Atoms for a while, actually. I have some recordings, which are these practice, basically somebody have a cassette. I don't know, you probably remember a cassette player. You hit record and play, and it records it. So I have some tapes, and then there's a bootleg 7-inch out there of with Izzy on it. And he played drums with us. I remember he had his drums. He had them at my mom's, when I lived with my mom. When I was a kid, they were in my bedroom, and stacks of boxes of his and stuff. And then he left. He literally left the band to go play. He wanted to be kind of like a Sunset Strip rock band, and we were kind of looked down our nose at him for doing that. But he, I mean, we went and saw Guns N' Roses actually at a frat party at UCLA, and they blew our minds. They were so fucking good.
Wow!
It was insane how good they were. There were probably maybe 10 people there.
So Izzy was your drummer. For those who don't know, he was known as a guitar player in Guns N' Roses, and sort of left at the height of their fame in a way. I think I'm not a Guns N' Roses fan per se, but I just because of the culture. I want to say he left around that Use Your Illusion records, maybe, like kind of after they'd gone really big, and then has been kind of a mysterious figure. Every once in a while he'll pop up and play with them and whatnot. So yeah, a couple of things. I didn't realize he played drums. Was he a great drummer?
Nope. He's okay drummer.
he was a medium drummer.
Yeah, I mean, he was, we were like just a sloppy punk rock band, so he was pretty good for that.
Okay. And but was he playing guitar at that point as well? Not with you guys, but did you know if he was playing guitar?
Nope.
Okay, so you go to see his new band or whatever, and you discover that he can play guitar. So it was a revelation for you.
Yeah, no, I knew that when he joined Guns N' Roses, he was a guitar player in the band. I knew that already. But when he was in the Adams, he was a drummer, and he never played guitar, showed any interest. But the interesting thing, though, is when he did show up in Guns N' Roses, a lot of, his style was, you could tell, was like real heavily influenced by like Keith Richards and Johnny Thunders and like that kind of thing. And the guitar player in the Adams, Taz, also like had that same look. So Taz used to gripe that a lot of that Izzy like stole a lot of his look from him.
Like that
I don't
kind
know
of,
if that's true or not.
That stylish newsboy hat and the vest, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Taz used to dress exactly like that.
Yeah, like Johnny Thunders a little bit too. Okay, so
we loved Johnny Thunders.
Absolutely, everyone did. Who, that's a sad story. I will say that. But very beloved. I just want to. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but for those, I was touching upon the fact that Izzy Stradlin is sort of an enigmatic figure. You've alluded to what he was like as a musician. Did you just give us an impression? What was Jeff as you knew him? What was he like? Was he a quiet guy? Was he a boisterous guy? Was he easy to get along with? Those sorts of things?
Yeah, very easygoing, chill person. And then I remember Jeff said that his friend Bill was coming from Indiana also. Mm-hmm. And so I remember we were at this one club called Raji's in Hollywood, another punk rock club on Hollywood Boulevard. And so we had met Bill a couple times, and then Bill then turned into like this rock dude and went on to be Axl Rose.
Yeah.
And I remember we were at Raji's, and I was looking at this one like rock guy, and it was like it's nighttime. We're in the club. He's wearing like aviator glasses that are mirrored and has on this like crazy rock and roll hat and stuff. And I'm looking at him like, who the fuck is this? And then he lifts up his glasses. He goes, Monty, it's me, Bill. And I was like, oh, damn.
Bill
you changed, man.
became Axl. So just again, I don't want to dwell on this because it's not really your story, but are you suggesting that, yes, the lore it's obvious, like Guns N' Roses became a Sunset Strip band, and like a glam rock, cock rock, whatever you want to call it, that kind of band. But did they have intimations of being more of a punk band at any point, like almost a hardcore band?
No,
not at all. Okay, so Bill shows up.
Not as far as I know. They always were like going to be a Sunset. Like there was a place on Sunset at that time called Gazari's. That's where all like the hair bands and metal bands would play.
Yeah.
And the Rainbow. So that's like that it was a whole other scene, totally different scene than the punk scene.
Right.
People would mix a little bit, but it was pretty different. I will say this about Guns N' Roses. That first record, those are great songs. They're great songwriters and they're great musicians. So they, it was really good. Like I said, we saw them at a frat party and it just blew our minds.
Yeah. And certainly informed by punk, thrash metal, their thrash metal tendencies were. Is that safe to say? I know we get a little defensive and there can be an orthodoxy around what punk means. I don't think of them as a punk band in any other. I think Bill and Jeff showed up from Indiana to be rock stars in LA, basically. And just by the way you described how they changed, they were adapting to what it meant to be a rock star, I think. Is that a fair way of putting it?
I guess so. I don't know. They were definitely like a glam hair band.
Yeah.
But they were just really good at what they did.
Yeah. Okay.
and really good songwriters.
Did you see them? You mentioned that show you went to with 10 people. Did you see them more before they kind of blew up?
Nope.
No, that was it. Okay.
That was the only. And I remember Axl at the time at the UCLA party. Not to again spend too much time on Guns N' Roses, but he was wearing assless chaps. So he was walking around with his butt. In other words, with his butt sticking out with these chaps. And there were all these jocks at this frat that were really, really upset about that he was freaking people out a lot at the frat party. I mean, we went to the frat party to support Jeff. We were like, okay, let's go see Jeff's new band. Go jump in the car and go.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say that's certainly the New York Dolls influence, right? The androgyny, the flirting with, I guess, homosexuality, really. I mean, on some level, like taking things from that culture. In retrospect, it was pretty bold of them, I guess. Would you agree?
The assless chaps at a UCLA frat party is pretty fucking bold.
Pretty brave, right? Yeah, there's yeah. Okay.
That's pretty in your face.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, anyway, I just, again, thanks for indulging me. I'm, again, not really a fan of, I'm not a fan of that band, but it's intriguing, these connections you have, Monty, and the work you've done and the people that have kind of, proven to be really interesting collaborators. So the Atoms forms, I think, in the early 80s. How long does that band last?
Not very long, like 79 to like 82-ish.
Oh, okay.
I would say. So it's pretty much just at like kind of the dawning, kind of that transition from like the 70s punk rock in Hollywood, like the Germs and the Dills and Middle Class and Suburban Lawns and all those types of bands. And it was kind of, they were more screamers. They were more like kind of coming from like an art scene, I guess, in a way. But then there was a transition into more of like a hardcore kind of thing that started coming in with like Black Flag and the Adolescents, Circle Jerks, all those bands started kind of changing. So it was kind of on the cusp of like that transition in punk rock, at least in Hollywood and LA. And the Atoms, we were really into Johnny Thunders and Rolling Stones, kind of Exile on Main Street kind of vibe, I guess, too. I don't know, but so that was kind of the vibe that we were. I mean, it was thrashy garage rock is really what it turned out to be in punk rock scene. But yeah, it lasted about till 82, and then I ended up getting, my hero was Johnny Thunders, and I ended up getting really, really involved with drugs. There was a lot of drugs in that scene, regardless of Johnny Thunders. I mean, people were using tons of narcotics and speed and every which way, and I ended up getting kind of involved in that, and that really was the end of that band. And then
oh no, I'm sorry to. Well, I didn't realize that was your trajectory. Are you doing okay now, Days?
Oh yeah. Thank God. I was really pretty involved with drugs from probably about 83, and then fortunately and grateful, I was able to get sober in 87 and been sober ever since.
Oh well, good for you, and we're all happy because. What I was going to say is, in retrospect, that LA scene that you're describing, the hardcore and punk scene, there's tragedy there. There's darkness there. Even in the music that was being made, there was a hue to it that was like, in retrospect, it was, I guess darkness is the only way to put it. Was that you were getting into drugs, I assume. Sadly, you might have lost some friends and people in the scene. Is that a fair assessment of that time? Oh yeah. I think the person that comes to mind the most for me was Darby Crash. I was younger than him. I think he was probably in his early 20s, and I was probably like 16 or 17. So then if you're like in your 20s and you're a teenager, they seem like so much older than you, when probably just a couple years. But he was, really into drugs and was one of the people, to pass away for their time because of that. Well, he took his own life, and that, I can't imagine what that would do to someone like you. You're saying you kind of looked up to the Germs, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember the day that I heard that he died. It was pretty devastating.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm the type of person I like to save all this shit. So I saved like all the articles that were like in the local paper, and actually, I think he died like a day or two or a week before John Lennon was murdered.
Yeah.
And then that was like the big news was John Lennon.
Yeah.
For all the reasons that you think of. But yeah, there were a lot of people, and that guy Taz, who I played with in Adams, where I was fortunate enough to get out of the drug scene, and fortunately have kind of get my life back. Taz never did, and he stayed in the drug scene until he died. He died at a homeless camp, So.
I'm so sorry.
Praise to God.
I'm so sorry that happened, and I didn't mean to open old wounds, so to speak. But I think some of us got a real impression of the scene that we're describing from some of the documentaries that were made, including The Decline of Western Civilization. Is there any chance you are in footage from the films and documents from that time that we might have caught sight of you real quick or something?
I actually was at most of those shows and actually went with the Germs with Darby, and we all drove to go do the filming together. But I was I don't know, just being very, very aloof. So when it came to being filmed, I didn't like it, and so I would just kind of hang back and was never. But I went to many of those shows. They filmed in the South Bay at the Fleetwood. I can't remember where they filmed the Germs. I think the Germs might have been at the Hong Kong. I can't remember. I'd have to look at the film.
That sounds right from my vague memory of the film. I think you're correct. Yeah.
Yeah, because we all like hung out together with Darby, and actually Darby lived with this woman Amber and her husband, and it was in Hollywood, right down the street from where I grew up. So I used to walk down from my mom's house and hang out with Amber and Darby. Don, that was Amber's husband, Don, and at this apartment over on Franklin. I lived on Beechwood, and I'd walk down and hang out with him. And I remember one time he got locked out of his house, and so he came up to my house and was hanging out on the couch. My mom came home and was talking with him, and she's into the Baha'i faith, so she's talking with him, and somehow or another the Baha'i faith came up. And then he's saying, yeah, I'm reading this book where like my faith is like I take some dice, and I guess in this book you assign different things to the dice that you do. And so that's what that was like. He was like trying to explain that to my mother about some dice thing, and it also included murder in it. So I don't know, not that he murdered anybody, but it was an interesting interaction. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So you're for us now, this is, stuff of historical note, and you were right there. I want to get us to that. Well, first of all, so you mentioned from the end of the band, Adams in 83 to around 87, you were immersed in drugs. And is it safe to say you weren't making much music in that time, or were you? No
Okay.
music, just chasing drugs.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
100%.
So you get sober in 87. When does music re-enter the picture for you as a player, as a writer, these sorts of things?
Oh, that's a good question. So yeah, I sobered up in 87, and I think about 88 or so, I had a guitar, because again, like I loved Giant Thunder, so I had like this Les Paul Jr. that I bought in the early 80s. It was used like probably some like, I don't know, 1960 or so, Les Paul Jr. I won't go into there's like a story with that guitar. I won't go into it, but okay. Well, actually, another thing that got thrown, that guitar got Taz threw it at his girlfriend, broke it in half, and we had somebody glue it back together who was like a guitar person, luthier, and then I also had him paint it white and turn it into a double cutaway because I wanted it to look like Johnny Thunder's guitar.
Yeah,
it actually has the wrong cutaway. So I had that guitar, and then bought an amp in like maybe 88 or something like that, this old Mesa Boogie, and started playing guitar. Tried to start a band with this woman, Carla Boslich. She was in this band, Ethel Meatplow.
Mm-hmm.
Her and I tried to start a band together. And then Eric Avery, who was playing in Jane's Addiction at the time, he came and jammed with us and played bass for a while. But that band never played out, never took off.
You played in a band with Carla Boslich, and sorry, I'm a big fan of Carla's, so that's amazing. Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, Carla and I were very, very good friends at that time. Yeah. And we went, practiced and wrote songs and did stuff. And then I think she ended up, Ethel Meatplow, and started, took off, and with John Napier, who also was a very, very good friend.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Eric Avery was, in Jane's Addiction, that was blowing up at that time, like huge, which, again, those early Jane's Addiction records are just great. Those first two records are amazing. And then, so that band didn't work out, but I still had my guitar, and I started listening to more early 80s hardcore. I had this cassette for How Could Help Be Any Worse by Bad Religion. I think it's like their first release. Mm-hmm. And I just started listening to that cassette a lot, and I had like a job that I had to ride a bus. So I'd just be on the bus listening to it. And I got into it, and I just started writing hardcore songs on my guitar, and kind of in the vein of early Bad Religion, Minor Threat, Wasted Youth, early Adolescence. And it just kind of brought me back to that early 80s scene, of, Starwood, Vex, all these clubs I used to go to. And, just started just messing around, writing hardcore songs. The band I was doing with Carla was more kind of, more, I guess, garage, kind of thrash rock kind of thing.
Right.
And so this was the band stuff I started writing for this, which wasn't good writing for a band or anything, it was just for the fun of it, was way more hardcore kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that, and that's how I kind of entered into like, DFL and stuff like that.
But beyond the Carla thing didn't work out. You started immersing yourself in early 80s hardcore and Bad Religion and things like that. You're kind of just what's the word? Workshopping. You're just doing this on your own, basically. Playing with yourself.
Yeah, I was playing with myself. I do that a lot. I was just for the fun of it. I mean, I love writing songs. That's when as soon as I have a guitar in my hand, I can't play other people's music. I'm really bad at covers. I'm not the world's greatest guitar player. And all I can do is play my own music. So I just start writing songs as soon as I'm playing guitar. I get bored with the stuff I've already written, and I just start just cranking out songs. That's what I do.
It seems like you're a kind of an impulsive player to some extent then. Like you play a thing, and then you're kind of, we'll get into the DFL record that we're here to talk about in a moment, because it seems to me that it was done quickly. But do you consider yourself kind of like an impulsive player in that you've come up with something, you play it, and then you kind of move on? Am I capturing you in some way?
Yeah. I mean, some songs come together really quickly. Some songs kind of linger, and you have to like kind of go back to the riff and mess around with it until it sounds right. But I don't know if I've ever thought of myself being an impulsive player. But yeah, I just kind of that's what I do, is just, when I have a guitar and I'm playing, I just start writing music.
Maybe impulsive is the wrong word. You don't dwell on things too much? Is that a way of putting it? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't have to encapsulate you in one or two ways. I just I'm trying to get a handle on it, because it does seem like you're decisive on some level. You make a thing, and that's it. That's what it is, and then you move on. Yeah,
definitely the way DFL records.
Yeah.
Definitely that is 100% the way DFL records, and that I love is like we don't dwell on stuff. It's more about like the performance and the energy and the feeling, and but we can get into like the whole recording thing in a bit if you want.
No, I do want to, because it seems to me that then the next big. So in the time frame we're talking about, is your next band ostensibly DFL?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
How did it sort of first start? You're the riff master. You're the Jimmy Page guy. You've got guitar parts. What happens next?
Well, at that time in like 88, 89, a good friend of ours, Ione Sky, who was more of a friend of my brother's growing up in Hollywood. Actually, Mike, my brother, was really good friends with Ione's brother, Donovan. And anyway, Ione starts hanging out with us a bit, and at the time, early on, she was like dating Anthony Kiedis, who also was a friend of ours, who I grew up with in Hollywood, him and Flea.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, Ione, I think she broke up with Anthony and starts dating Adam Horovitz, and that's kind of how I got to know Adam, was through Ione. And then we had my wife and I, my wife Kim Jones. We had a son, and who I met her like after I stopped using drugs in like 88. And we had a son in 89, and Ione was just really into, we were like the first people in our scene to have a kid. And Ione was just really enamored by our son Bella, and she would want to babysit. And so her and Adam would come over and babysit Bella. And so we just got to know the Beasties through that, and just started hanging out with Adam and going to lunches and birthday parties and weddings. I went to Adam's wedding, Adam and Ione's wedding. Adam and Ione came to my wedding. And, they were just like friends. And one day I was writing all these punk rock songs, and since they were friends, I would go over to G-Sun and hang out there and see what was going on. And I just was kidding around, I guess, with Adam. I was just like, hey, I wrote these hardcore songs. Would you want to check them out or something like that? And one thing led to another, and I just threw the idea out. He liked the songs of starting a band, and he was into it. And so we started DFL, and I came up with the name. Mm-hmm. And then we recruited Tom Davis, who was an old friend of mine. Tom I had known since back in the punk scene, actually in the skating scene, because Tom and I skated together in the late 70s. And I used to sleep over actually at Tom's house when he lived in Malibu, and that's how I knew him and his sisters. But yeah, got Tom to sing, and I think we actually had Max Perlich, who was also hanging around a lot, and he was good friends with Adam. Max, I think, was going to sing. It didn't. I don't think that panned out. I think Mike D played drums for a second or two, and then we got Tony Converse to play drums, and one thing led to another, and just started, cranking out these songs, and they sounded good, and it was easy at G-Sun, and I think, one night we just recorded everything. I think Adam was like, hey, we're going to record everything, and Mario set up all the mics, and we just recorded it live, and I didn't really think much. We weren't like signed to Grand Royal or anything like that, or to anybody. It was just for the fun of it, really. And then I think I was in school at the time, and I went to England for the summer for some school project. And while I was in England, my wife wrote me and said that the Beasties had released this record, and I was like, oh wow, that's crazy, and came back and had the 7-inch, but nobody had really asked me about it. I don't think. That's not that I minded. I was happy about it.
No one asked you or notified. I guess this was pre-internet, so no one could just fire off a text or an email. That's hilarious. You found out the album you played on and wrote was out while you were in England. That's kind of amazing.
Something like that. I remember my wife sending me a letter maybe or something. I don't know. Yeah, maybe it came out slightly before. I don't know, but somewhere around there. But I wasn't part of that. And actually, through this release that we did with Trust, we wrote this 10,000 word oral history. Yeah. And I actually learned a lot about the release that I didn't know. Kind of we interviewed this one guy, Max Burgos, who was a label manager for Grand Royal at the time, and he shared all this information that I just had no idea about in terms of, Adam, how passionately Adam felt about the release.
Oh, well, that's lovely. I was going to ask, like, that's an interesting milieu you describe. You talk about several of the people you mentioned are actors or, Hollywood type people. And then there's you got skaters, you got musicians. And it was very, it sounds like it was like a social product, DFL, in a lot of ways. Like, for some people, joking around with Adam from Beastie Boys to actually have that lead to a collaboration might be a little surprising. But you were friends with him; it was natural, right? There was never a point where the Beastie affiliation was a distraction or anything like that. Maybe later that became the case, but this was all very organic, I guess is what I'm getting at. That's what it sounds like. Is that fair?
Yeah, very, very organic, very kind of just not like a planned kind of thing, and just and it was a very social, very social kind of thing going on that, kind of here in Silver Lake, Mike D, we lived in Echo Park, which is near Silver Lake, and Mike D was actually married to Tom's sister, Tom, who's a singer in DFL, to his sister Tamara.
Oh, Tamara, right? Yeah. Tammy D.
Yeah. So Tamara Davis is Tom's older sister.
Oh, okay.
And Tamara and Mike lived around the corner from us, and then I think she moved on to maybe a bigger house, I'm guessing. Actually, they did get a bigger house. Her and Mike got a bigger house in Silver Lake.
Yeah.
That we used to go to all the time and hang out there as well. This had like a pool and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
And then Tom's other sister, Kim, moved into that house with Wag, and Wag played in Mary's Danish, which was like a pretty well-known band in the early 90s. So yeah, it was like a scene, and there was the extra large store. So XL, was here in, I guess it's Silver Lake on Vermont, and we would go over there and hang out with the guys from the extra large store, and yeah, it was just like a whole scene.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool.
Very heady time, I imagine. Lots going on. It sounds like. Yeah, that sounds exciting. So Adam is in the band in an impromptu way. You make this record together. He doesn't stay in the band for long. Is that right?
Yeah. So we played a few shows. I think we played with Fugazi once at the Palladium. We played a couple bar shows. Our friend owned a bar in Hollywood, so we played there. I think it was called the Gaslight, and we played Lollapalooza. There was a Lollapalooza here in kind of in LA. It was on the San Gabriel Valley, and I think we played the second stage, and we were the first band that played. And we did it the first day, and they liked us so much they asked us back the next day. Oh, cool! Which I thought was funny.
But you played at like noon, right?
Yeah, like noon. Literally, people are like walking, because the second stage was like right near one of the entrances, so people literally are walking in past us while we're playing.
And Adam is in the band. Adam's in the band at these shows.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, we were like the opening band for Fugazi again, as people like are walking into the Palladium. We're playing. Yeah, which I thought was cool. They didn't like say like, well, I'm Adam Horowitz and we've got to do da da da. They were always pretty humble about things.
He seems like a very humble. I have a limited experience. I interacted with him this year, Adam Horowitz. And he seems like such a lovely and humble guy. And I don't want to go on about it. People have heard it. Just meant so much to me to connect with him, because it's very few artists I can say I've loved since I was 7 years old, 8 years old when I first heard Beastie Boys. And yeah, he just seems like a lovely guy. But so I just want to say that checks out for me, that he wouldn't be playing any ego games. I'll play at noon. I don't care. I'm just in a punk band. You know what I mean? Like I just want to say that's nice. It's just nice to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But he didn't last in the. Just to back to my earlier point, you played some shows with him. The band, as we're speaking, is still going, right?
Yeah, we played some shows, and it turned out to be kind of a good thing, where we were writing songs and people were into the music, and we wanted to do another record, and actually I went and spoke with Mike about it and about doing another record with Grand Royal, and I don't think he was that into it. And so Brett from Epitaph Gerwitz from Epitaph had hit us up maybe a year before and said like, hey, do you want to sign with it? Come over to Epitaph. And we were like, no, we're with Grand Royal. I think, we're going to kind of hang out here. But then when Mike wasn't interested in us doing another record, I reached out to Brett and said, hey, would you be interested in DFL? And he was. And I think the only caveat was he just wanted to talk to Mike D to make sure that it was cool with him, that everything was cool. And I think Brett and Mike spoke and everything was cool. And then Adam, Check Your Head was, I think, coming out or was out. Not Check Your Head.
Ill Communication.
Yeah, Check Your Head was
Ill Communication. Yeah.
And I think Check Your Head was the record that was coming out.
Check Your Head came out in 92.
92.
Ill Communication came out in 94.
So probably Check Your Head was out.
Yeah.
And because this is probably about 93, 94. Well, anyway, I remember that it was like, Check Your Head was out and What You Want and they were like blowing up, and he and Adam was basically like, he's like, I remember him telling me like, hey Monty, I'm in this other band and it's going to be taking up a lot of my time and I don't want to hold you guys back.
Yeah.
And I was just like, duh, and of course, why wouldn't you? Your band, the Beasties were blowing up, and the music they were making was just like next level. I mean, just amazing stuff they were doing on those two records.
Yeah.
Check Your Head is probably Ill Communication, like in my top 10. They're just such great records.
That's an interesting time, right? The Beastie Boys blew up in '86 or whatever, and then they put out Paul's Boutique a couple of years later, and that commercially didn't succeed, even though we now view it as a very pioneering hip-hop record. So in the time you were interacting with them, they were kind of in the middle of being huge and maybe being forgotten. And then you're right, Check Your Head and Ill Communication made them huge again.
They were huge.
Yeah.
At that time, they were, on the top of the world.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
And doing stuff that was amazing, that I was just, I could relate to and really inspired by, you look at Ill Communication and Check Your Head has like hardcore, has this next level hip hop where they're sampling themselves, and then has like crazy like meters kind of jams that they do that sound so good. It was just nuts.
Oh.
And then they had Grand Royal Magazine also. That was really cool, which I wrote a couple articles for. The first two ones I wrote a couple articles.
Oh, what did you write about? I collected those. What did you write about?
I did one which was like just like a DFL manifesto. I think we call it a DFL manifesto. And then I did another one for a good friend of ours, also in this late 80s, early 90s kind of Silver Lake Echo Park crowd, was the director Allison Anders. She did Gas, Food, and Lodging with Ione, and then she was doing Ma Vida Loca, which was like kind of this East LA kind of drama. So I interviewed Allison for one of the early Grand Royals. I can't remember which one it is. And I remember I brought Spike with me, Spike Jones, because he was in the mix also taking photos. He took the photos for the first DFL record and the 7-inch. And so I thought, Spike he's told me he's interested in getting into film, so maybe he'd want to come and shoot the photos for this interview I'm doing with Allison. And he can get to know Allison and kind of get into like the movie, maybe meet somebody in like the movie industry.
Oh wow, that's nice. That's nice of you to think of that. More social connections. I feel like that's a big part of the Beastie Boys Grand Royal realm. It's what resonated with me. They seem to always be expanding their community, connecting people with each other who they thought were cool. So it seems like you had the same mentality. Yeah.
So I did that. I wrote like an interview with Allison, and it was fun. It was a good time. But when Mike wasn't interested in doing a second record with us, and and the Beasties were blowing up, and obviously they were going on like tour for a long time, going on big long tours, world tours. Adam was like, sorry, I don't want to hold you back, and he said, look, if you do this record with Epitaph, I'll produce it. I'm happy to produce it. And so we got a new bass player, Tom Barta, who is a great bass player also, and wrote the songs for this record we put out in '95 called "Proud to Be," and put it on an Epitaph. And we recorded it again at Grand Royal, at G-Sun.
G-Sun, yeah.
But that time Adam and Mario produced it. So
nice. Well, it's got to be nice for you to kind of come full circle in a way to be on Epitaph, given your love of Bad Religion, and that's a pretty amazing trajectory, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I've known, again, I'd grown up with a lot of those guys, and it was a really amazing time to be on Epitaph because right when we signed with Epitaph in '94, '95, that's when around that time is when the Offspring blew up, and Epitaph had, just an incredible amount of money was flowing into that record label because of the Offspring, and then other bands started blowing up like Rancid and NoFX, and the whole punk. There was like this whole rebirth of punk, with Green Day and everything. Yeah. So that was a cool time to be there. We again kind of were in the right place at the right time. Just dumb luck.
Well, the album's called My Crazy Life, but I think it's a fortuitous life for you, if I may. It just seems like you've been, something powerful about you, Monty. You're in the right place at the right time. You know the right people, and you get to do really cool shit. And that's amazing. I want to ask about something real quick here. As I say, the album that we're discussing is My Crazy Life. It's got a great reissue. I love the zine, and you mentioned the oral history. It's really well put together, so congrats on that. I just want to focus in on the crazy part, because someone who's not here with us today is a crazy Tom Davis. You mentioned Tom Davis, but he's known as Crazy Tom Davis. The album's called My Crazy Life. Let's focus in on Tom just for a moment. What makes Tom so crazy, would you say?
Gosh, you'd have to ask him that question. I wonder myself. I love Tom. Like I said before, we were like little skater punkers together, and then kind of went our separate ways from the punk scene. Like I got into drugs. He moved to Hermosa and Hermosa Beach, and connected with the Pennywise crowd, with Jim and Fletcher, that were kind enough to do part of the oral history with us. Yeah. And really got involved with that scene, and then I kind of reconnected with him in the late '80s, early '90s, really early '90s, through his sisters, and we're Camera was married to Mike, and Tom kind of was in that world with Max Perlich, and I don't think he told me he'd never sang in a band before DFL though, and he's a pretty chill, mild-mannered person until he gets the mic in his hand, and then he's crazy. He becomes Tom.
Crazy Tom. Okay, I think something about hearing his voice amplified sets him off. Yeah, and he goes up. Does Tom write most of the lyrics?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way that we've written most of our songs, I write the music. Usually I'll come with a pretty much of a formed song with verses and choruses and breakdowns and whatnot. And then I'll say to Tom, like, look, I'm really good at writing choruses, kind of the catchy part. So I'll say like, hey, I wrote this song that goes, Pizza Man, Pizza Man, Pizza Man, he delivers. And then Tom will write like a verse around that. And to this day, there's some of the verses he's written, I don't even know what he's saying. And I don't even really care. It just makes sense. We don't sit down and plan it out like, okay, you need to be talking about this, that, or the other. We just kind of, again, it's kind of organic. So that's a lot of the songs, like Proud to Be, that song, that's how he did that. And a lot of the songs have like the catchy choruses, all right, that. But Tom, I'll just say this, he's not here. Unfortunately, couldn't make it, but he's really a poet. When you listen to like the stuff that he writes, it's just kind of like this hardcore poetry of just where does it come from? I don't know, but
Yeah.
He's got like an interesting way of just kind of putting stuff together.
Well, it comes through on this record and other DFL records. So I just want to say it was nice to get to know more about you and how this band came together and to celebrate this release, My Crazy Life. Monty, if people want to learn more about DFL and this reissue on the internet or elsewhere, where would you like to point them to?
Well, here, let me give you Tom's cell. No, just kidding.
We could just everyone just call Tom, and he'll tell you where to go.
Tom. He probably won't answer. No, you can go on to Trust Records. We have a page there that has a way to get the record. You can get it online through Trust Records. Also, feel free to follow us on our socials. Whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Threads or formerly Twitter. I don't know. We don't use that, but they're all the same. Is what I want to say. They're all at Proud to Be DFL.
Okay. So people can keep track of you there. Are there things to keep track of? Is there new music on the horizon? Tour dates, these sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. We're working on a new record right now. We put one out, I think in 21 it was after like 17 years of not doing anything, we put out a record on this label called Sabam that's out of Europe, and the record was great. It's produced by Greg Hetson from the Circle Jerks, and it just sounds like old school DFL. Just don't overthink it and just play and quick takes, record stuff live. And now we're working on another record for Sabam. Hopefully it'll come out in 24 and playing shows. So yeah, best place to follow us is Instagram. Follow us at Proud to Be DFL on Instagram. That's where most of the stuff that gets posted is. Okay,
cool. That's great. So I'll link to some of these things as well, so people can just click on them in the show notes. Monty, if we can go out on a song from My Crazy Life, I wonder if you can pick one and tell us why you chose it.
Well, I guess I'd have to pick Pizza Man. That's like one of the more popular ones off the record, but it's also like one of my favorites.
Okay. I mean, I love pizza. People think of me as a pizza man. I have a pizza in-kind pizza sponsorship I don't get to access it as much since I left Guelph. Yeah, with a Guelph pizza place. And that was the deal. I'll promote you if we get free pizza, me and my family. And they were like, done. And it's one of my people made fun of me, like, don't you want money? And I was like, I do want money, but I also like free pizza. And there's nothing more satisfying than free pizza. Do you know what I'm talking about? You ever had free pizza, Monty?
I have. We have a dear friend, Terry, who has a pizza place, Air Pizza. And he brought me actually a full pizza for my birthday a couple years ago, which was very nice. And his pizza place is not close by.
Oh, nice.
But like if any of the pizza chains are listening and they want Pizza Man, if they want to do any licensing deals with DFL, hit us up. We're open to all offers, whether it's for free pizza or whether it's for millions of dollars. We're open.
Free pizza tastes better is my motto. I think it just tastes better. We're not selling out, everyone. We're just saying we're acknowledging the power of pizza. And if you can get free pizza or something, you should do it. That's the moral of this episode, I think, maybe. In any case, from their classic album, newly reissued, it's called My Crazy Life. This is DFL with Pizza Man. Monty, this was a real pleasure to get to speak with you. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I wish you the best of luck in the future.
Thanks, Vish. It's my pleasure.
All right, this is for Max Perlick, Pizza Man. Hey, Adam, did you order our pizza yet? Pizza Man, Pizza Man, Pizza Man, Pizza Lover, Pizza Man, Pizza Man, Pizza Man, Pizza Lover. Every fucking night we get a pizza. I want pepperoni, you want extra cheese. If you see that Pizza Man driving late at night, I know who you are, so get out,
Yeah, I meant to say at the beginning of this episode, and I forgot. There's obviously, you could tell, there's some audio quality issues there, but I hope you were still able to enjoy that conversation with Monty from DFL. It was very nice to catch up with Monty and have a chat about this amazing stories he has, all the people he met along the way there in his musical trajectory. Quite interesting. So thank you, Monty, for being on this show. This happens to be the 807th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available just about wherever it is you get your podcast. If you can't find an episode that you're looking for, if you want to learn more about me and sign up for my monthly newsletter, please visit vishkhanna.com. You can also like Creative Control or follow it on various social media platforms. Primarily, we have a Facebook page still. You can follow the show on Twitter still at Vish Creative, or you can follow me directly on things like Twitter and Instagram at Vish Khanna, and I'm also on Blue Sky and TikTok and Threads, and I have some of the other things too. You'll find me. Just try and find me if you want to, and follow me, and we can correspond and connect that way if you like. Also, please visit patreon.com/creative control to make a flexible monthly donation to support all the work that goes into this podcast. $6 American or more a month grants you access to some exclusive content, and you get episodes earlier than everybody else. And if you're interested in receiving a Creative Control t-shirt, message me on Patreon and I'll get you one while supplies last. Supplies are dwindling, so if you've heard me say this before and thought, I'll get one someday, maybe get on it. I'd get on it because I'm running out of sizes, that's for sure. I want to thank Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee, respectively, in Guelph, Ontario, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario, for their in-kind support for this show. All fine independent businesses, and as you heard me tell Monty, sometimes I get free stuff from these places. That's the deal. That's what I wanted to promote, some local businesses, and also not take their money. I wanted their wares. So that's what I did. It usually worked out just fine. So there you go. I want to thank Jim Guthrie. He lends me some music for this show. You can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you so much for listening to this episode with Monty from DFL and checking out this reissue of My Crazy Life. I hope you'll also subscribe to this podcast or follow it and tell all your friends all about it as well. If you've liked what you've heard, that's a great way to spread the word and get people on the Creative Control train, I suppose. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I will talk to you very soon. Be well. Bye for now.